Nuhat Osman,
And my name is Asandam Georgia.
and we are coming today with Papano the Difference to present you guys this lovely in-depth workshop about psychology. A bit about myself. Again, my name is Nuhat Osman. I am studying at the Emirates University. I'm currently doing my BA honors. I'm 21 years old and I want to go into clinical psychology and I want to specialize in sex, relationships, and pornography usage, specifically in neurodivergent individuals. So those are people who have autism, Down syndrome, and help them with their sex life, right? And my personal quote from me to you is that if you can only give 20% today, if that's all you can give today, you are giving your 100%. And I am proud of you for that. All right.
Yeah, thank you. So, like I said, my name is Asandam Georgia, and I am an honors student at the University of Witwatersrand. I am 21 years old, and I am interested in branching into behavioral economics and economic psychology, particularly how behavioral insights can complement traditional economic models to better understand consumer behavior, financial decision making, and market dynamics. And my quote for you is by Steve Biko, which reads as the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed, right? And thinking about this quote in relation to the space that we're in and how undervalued our degrees, like because the way society frames BA degrees, it's usually from a level of, I guess, inferiority, etc., right? But what I want to say to you today is that your degree is a foundation for greatness, and um, you can use it in a lot of ways, and kind of just there to not succumb to the limitations that are placed on us, because in the work that we do, we are very valuable, and there is a lot of insight, and a lot of spaces wouldn't be able to function without our knowledge and expertise. That's my quote for you today.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Asanda. Now, again, a bit about what is Papano. Papano is a non-profit organization founded in 2024 where we support you guys, psychology students in South Africa. We mentor, we give a sense of community. Right now, with all of us here, we are a community and access to information and opportunities. When it comes to information, currently what we're giving is information. And then a little bit about what Papano is. It is the difference, reflecting its commitment to creating a lasting impact by investing in future psychologists. So basically, you guys, passionate about service, representation, and transforming mental health care from the ground up. All right. And how can you be part of Papano? If you go onto our website, you will find our hub, our resource hub, and there's a bunch of different resources there that you guys can have free access to. And if when it comes to opportunities and volunteering, please follow us on social media. We are always posting on there. For example, like this workshop, there's going to be many other beautiful workshops in the future that you can have access to, and different volunteering opportunities and jobs and all of those beautiful stuff. All right, now let's get into the presentation. I'm going to hand this next three sections over to Asanda, where she'll be talking about educational psychology, industrial psychology, and research psychology. I'm just going to switch over my screen sharing. All right. Are you guys ready? Are we excited? Are we going to get into it? And take it away, Asanda.
Thank you so much, Nuhad. So, like Nuhad has said, that we will be starting with educational psychology. So, what we aim to do today is to kind of show you the difference in between the different streams in psychology, and based on what you want to do within the space, and like who you want to work with, the spaces you want to work with, it will kind of give you a clearer idea of the path to look into and possibly apply to for masters. Okay, that's it. Next slide. Okay. Okay, so first we're going to talk about what is educational psychology, right? So educational psychology focuses on learning, development, and the emotional well-being within education settings, right? And educational psychologists help children and adolescents overcome learning barriers, emotional difficulties, and social challenges within the school setting, but also like within their broader life. Next, we're going to talk about what an educational psychologist does. So, an educational psychologist, like we said, assesses learning difficulties, so like ADHD, dyslexia, or barriers to learning that students may exhibit. And they support learners, teachers, and parents throughout this process. So, educational psychologists provide intervention programs for emotional and behavioral problems, and they work with issues like bullying, trauma, divorce, anxiety, social phobias, anything that may be affecting the student and it affecting the way they function within the school environment, right? And they also design individual support plans for the students to like aid in their development. Next, we're going to talk about the process of becoming an educational psychologist. Firstly, you'd have to do your bachelor's degree, as I assume most of you are doing, and then you do an honors in psychology for a year, and then you can do your master's in educational psychology for 2 years, right? So some institutions might require you to do your PGCE before you do your master's, and some institutions might let you do your master's straight. So it depends on the various requirements.
Sorry, I joined a meeting.
What meeting?
Hold on.
Can you guys please mute yourselves? Thank you. So then, in your second year of masters, you would do your internship, which is often school based. So you would be working with learners and learning how to essentially practice within your capacity as an educational psychologist. And then you will register with the HPCSA after that, and that would be the process of you becoming an educational psychologist. Next, we're going to talk about the salary range for educational psychologists, which ranges from 15,000 to 100,000. So the range is quite large because it depends on various factors. So it can be your location, the school, or whether you're working with the government as or an independent contractor within private practice, etc. So the reason why there is a big salary range is because, like as we know, with the government, their schools don't have the exact same resources, so it also depends on where you are placed, where you might be in a school with lower resources or you might be in a school with higher resources, and that would impact your salary, but it is quite rewarding. And then an additional note for someone who does pursue educational psychology would be that you can also serve as a normal psychologist, like within counseling psychology spaces, and offer individual and family therapy outside of the educational space. So now we are going to move on to discussing industrial and organizational psychology. Okay, so what is industrial psychology? So, industrial psychology, you can hear some people saying organizational psychology or industrial psychology. It's important to note that it is one and the same thing, and the terms are used interchangeably. But industrial psychology focuses on understanding human behavior within the workspace. So, it sits at the intersection of psychology and business and uses scientific methods to improve how organizations function and how employees experience work. So the goal isn't just to influence productivity, but also employer well-being, job satisfaction, and overall organizational effectiveness. And within the South African context, it plays an important role within the space of transformation, diversity, and ensuring workplace equity. Next, we're going to talk about what do industrial psychologists actually do, right? So, industrial psychologists are involved in multiple aspects of organizational life, right? So, firstly, we can speak about recruitment and selection, where organizational psychologists can design the hiring processes that ensure organizations select the best candidates. So, this would include developing job descriptions, creating psychometric assessments, conducting interviews, and competency evaluations. Next, we have employment, wellness, and coaching. Can you go to the previous slide, please? Thank you. So next we've got employee wellness and coaching. So they promote mental health and well-being in the workspace by designing wellness programs, supporting burnout prevention, and just offering coaching for leadership and career development. Next, we have performance management, where your industrial organizations will help organizations measure and improve employee performance by designing appraisal systems, setting up the KPIs, and providing feedback frameworks within the whole organizational structure. They also deal with conflict resolution, which helps maintain like the workplace environment, and that is also something a level that industrial psychologists can work at, where it would be mediating between employees or teams and facilitating communication and just an overall healthy environment. Lastly, no, not lastly. Now we're going to talk about organizational development, where you'd be working on improving the organizational structures and the culture within the organization, right? So you can like be looking at the management processes, and if something is working, and the improvement you can have to leadership strategies and enhancing employment engagement, and often step in during mergers, restructuring, and just the cultural transformation of the workplace. Lastly, we have workplace assessments, which is where you would use psychological tools to assess personality, cognitive ability, workplace styles, team dynamics, and the works. On the next slide, we are going to talk about how to become an industrial psychologist, right? So first, again, you'll do your bachelor's degree for 3 years, right? And when you do third year, you can major in industrial psychology, right? So within just the psychology departments, you'll have modules that allow you to major in industrial psychology. But also at the same time, if you are coming from a, I guess, different more major or field, so like communications, for example, you can have modules which also align with industrial psychology. So that is probably the most important thing when considering going the industrial psychology route, is to ensure that your modules do align from a third year level. Next, then you'll do an honors in industrial psychology, which is a year, and then you'll do your industrial psychology masters, which is 2 years, and your internship would be in your second year of your masters. And then you can register with the HPCSA after that, and you don't need to do ComServe to be an industrial psychologist. So that is just the requirement for you to practice as an industrial psychologist. Again, you can work in the spaces like within just HR departments with your honors degree, but I think the most important distinction is that for you to be an industrial psychologist, you would need to complete your master's. So now we're going to talk about the salary range within industrial psychology. So it ranges for about 10,000 Rand to 100,000 Rand. Again, it depends on where you're working, what you're doing, because industrial psychology is a very diverse field. So there's a lot of different things within the space that you can be doing. So that will also, have an impact. What we can say is that there is a demand for industrial psychologists in general, because in a company, when you have a certain number of employees, you have to have, like, you're mandated to have an industrial psychologist there. So there is that level of demand. So why industrial psychology is important is that it creates healthier and more productive workspaces and improves the team morale and performance, and bridges the gap between people and profits, where a company is not just profit focused but also prioritizes the employees' well-being. So where industrial psychologists work, like we said, is that there is like it's very diverse. It's a diverse field, so you can be working in corporate organizations, within HR departments, within consulting, within talent management, or you could be working in consulting firms where you're advising um, various companies, and you can also be working in the government and public sector within policy and workforce planning, if that is something you would also like to do. And then we have in NGOs, you can work on employee development, organizational effectiveness, etc. And then as well as academic and research institutions. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the third section, which is research psychology.
Apologies, I'm just navigating this.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, cool. So now we're going to talk about research psychology, which is also in the same as industrial psychology. It's a field within psychology that not a lot of people when they start with undergrad are as exposed to, but as you go along, this is like something that could be of interest to you. So then, what is research psychology? So research psychology is a recognized category of psychology in South Africa where you can register with the HPCSA, and it focuses on the scientific study of human behavior and mental processes and involves a lot of like generating information to inform policy, businesses, and social interventions. So with research psychology, you aren't necessarily working in like providing therapy and counseling, but it serves as the backbone of like psychology, because a lot of the research that you can do does like come to play in like various like different things that you do within psychology. Next, we're going to talk about what do research psychologists do, right? So what I'm research psychologists can also just work in like a various different spaces, right? So you can work with like designing research studies through experiments, surveys, interviews, field experimentation, etc. Collect data from participants, analyze data using tools like SPSS, R, and Excel, and then interpret behavioral patterns and trends, right? And write reports, academic articles, and policy briefs within the spaces that you're working on in, right? And then obviously these findings would be presented to stakeholders like governments, NGOs, businesses, etc., depending on where you're working. Yeah. So within just the research psychology space,
Apologies.
within just the research psychology space, like I said, there is a lot that you can do because research is important, and just understanding like just the human behavior dynamics of things within just various spaces is something that is fruitful as well. Next, we're going to talk about how to become a research psychologist. So again, you do your undergrad for 3 years, and then you can do an honors in psychology, then your master's in research psychology for 2 years, and then an internship, which is where you require practical training, write your board exams, and register with the HPCSA as a research psychologist. Right, so that would be the process of becoming a research psychologist. And like I said, you would be turning like data into meaningful insights that influence decisions and policies, etc. So that is the space you'd be working in. Next, we're going to talk about where do research psychologists work, right? So research psychologists can work in academia, right? Which you can be work as a lecturer, you can work as a researcher, where you conduct independent or collaborative studies, publish academic articles, and contribute to the broader theoretical knowledge within the field of psychology, right? Then you can also work in research institutions like the Human Sciences Research Council. You can be a policy and social researcher, where you conduct large-scale studies on social issues like unemployment, education, or just like the broader psychological concepts, and also inform national policy. And you can, as a researcher, you can also work on funded research projects, collaborating with the government and international organizations as well. Next, yeah, so then I was saying, when you're working with the government, right, you can be a policy analyst or a program evaluator, many other roles where you use like your research findings to design, evaluate, and improve public policies in areas like health, labor, education, etc. And you can also assess whether the government interventions that already exist or that you played a part in creating are effective in achieving like the broader goals. And then in the private sector, you can work within market research to study consumer behavior and help companies understand what people want, purchasing behaviors, why they make the decisions that they do, how to just continue within that space. And you can also be a behavioral insights analyst where you apply psychological principles to influence decision making in like various spheres like financing and marketing and just other sectors. You can also branch into UX research, where you investigate how people interact with digital products to improve their usability and customer satisfaction. And then with the NGOs and international organizations, like I said, you can work as a development researcher to study social issues and inform interventions and programming. And you can track and evaluate the impacts of projects to ensure that they're effective and that they are evidence-based. So, yeah. Next slide that we're going to be talking about is the salary range. So again, because we said that we can speak about, you can be working in various different spaces and you'll be working at various different levels. Your salary in a year, you can, as an entry level, you can expect maybe 300,000, which would range from about 20,000 to 25,000 rand as an entry level research psychologist. And then as you continue, you move up to 400 to 700,000 a year. So again, depends on if you're working with in the private sector, you're working with government, or within just independent projects, right? And then also you can be working as a consultant, which does usually end up helping you get a higher like revenue, right? Depending on the amount of projects you're working, the amount of companies you're working on, etc. So the salaries are often higher within the private sector and consulting than they are in academia. But again, both spaces are a fruitful place to be in. And at the end of the day, you are still making an impact, which helps people on a larger scale more than just an individual scale. Right. So the challenges would be that research psychology internships are a bit scarce, right? And because again, we know the reality in South Africa where there's a lot more people who are in the market than opportunities are available. That is the one challenge that I would like to note. And again, it's also highly competitive to enter to get into your masters, because there's a lot more people who apply for research psychology. Some people might be applying to clinical, and like we know, there's not a lot of space, and then they'd opt to go for research psychology as an alternative. So again, it is highly competitive, so you do need to ensure that you're on the ball with your marks and everything. Right. And then with research psychologists working in different spaces, there's like different spaces where the demand is increasing for people who with the expertise and the skills that you have, which would be in research project management, in working in the behavioral science units within corporate organizations, and within data analysis and data science, and within public policy and just development research. So yeah. So that concludes my section of the slides on the three, industrial psychology, educational psychology, and research psychology. So the reason we started with these three is because a lot less people do have information about these three fields within psychology. So we're just hoping that this information kind of broadens your thinking and allows you to like think more into, what you can do, where you can place yourself, etc. So what we're going to do now is have a Q&A session for these three fields. So you guys can just pop questions in the chat, and Nuad and I will try answer it to the best of our ability.
Thank you so much, Asanda, for that. I truly appreciate that. Very informative. Hello, Miguel. I think I might just want to, just like do each one like one a year, like one a year. You know what I'm saying? But thank you for that. Let's go to Iman has asked, is this like child psychology? That was at, so they're asking about educational psychology and child psychology.
So essentially, yes, right? Because you are working with children a lot, right? So again, you are working within like the education space. So you're working with people, like you could be working with small children, you can be working with primary school children, you can be working with high school children. So to that level, I would say yes, in the type of work and the impact that you do have.
To add on to that, I just want to note and make sure that you cannot become a child psychologist. That is not a thing in South Africa. You cannot register as a child psychologist because if any psychology you become from the six we presented to you now, you will be working with children with any sex. However, educational, they more, I would say, their biggest clientele is children. So that's there. The difference between HR and industrial psychology.
You can answer
So,
that. Yeah.
perfect. So when it comes to HR and industrial psychology, the biggest difference is assessment and evaluation. When you become a psychologist, you can do psychological assessments. You can take what you've learned and you can evaluate people on a scientific scale. When you're in HR, you cannot do that. What you can do is interpret data and you can do a bit of managing people. However, if somebody comes up to you and says, "Hey, I've been harassed at work," you cannot counsel them or give therapy to them. However, as an industrial psychologist, you can give a team of counseling and then thereafter do referring to either to a counseling psychologist or clinical psychologist. However, you can make sure that if whatever it is, whether it's in-house assault or whatever, you can manage it then and there because you're trained and equipped to. So the biggest difference is the level of their work and the way in which the work is implemented. All right.
Yeah. And also when you are like working within HR without like doing industrial psychology, you aren't qualified as a psychologist, right? So there are limitations to what you can do, like yes, when we're talking mediation, when we're talking just dealing with conflict resolution, yes, that is something you can do, but at a more I don't say counseling, but at a scale where you are like providing a level of counseling, you can't do that if you aren't a registered psychologist.
Yes. Is it possible to apply and qualify for an honors in industrial psychology when you have studied an undergraduate majoring in psychology and labor relations management? I did the industrial psychology modules throughout the third year of my undergraduate studies, by the way. To answer that in quick form, yes, you can you can qualify for an honors, not a master's, guys. Just to clarify, you can qualify for an honors in industrial psychology. There's not many institutions that offer an honors level in just pure industrial psychology. It's usually a general BA honors or different. However, something like UCT does offer an industrial psychology honors program. But please remember, if you do your honors in industrial psychology, you cannot apply for clinical or counseling masters. So whatever if you do choose honors in industrial, I think you can apply for research. I stand to be corrected. I will let you guys know. And you can apply for industrial masters. However, those are the only two masters you can apply for. The rest you cannot apply for the masters going forward. All
Yeah,
right.
just to add on to that, like we said that you have to have modules at a third year level that do correlate with the modules within industrial psychology, right? And again, you need to be checking different institutions' requirements for honors, right? Because, for example, VITS only needs you to have two of the four industrial psychology modules that they offer, right? So you can have been doing psychological interventions and then been doing organizational effectiveness and employment relations, etc., right? So different institutions do have different requirements, right? So if you are still exploring, that's okay, right? But just if you do think you want to go into the industrial psychology honors, you need to make sure that, like, you've got all your ducks in a row with the requirements that you need.
Yes. Is there any tips for studying psychology? We will answer that at the end of the whole presentation. We still want to go through clinical counseling and neuropsychology, so we'll answer that at the end. Have you guys already gone through industrial? Yes, we have. Please note that the session is recorded and you guys will have access to that. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Just a quick one. To master in educational psychology, are there any specific subjects that you need to take during your honors? Not necessarily specific subjects, however, criteria and the curriculum of your honors.
Oh my word.
We've lost New Heart. Asanda, you can take over.
Oh, okay. I thought it was me.
No, it's not.
Okay, I thought it was. Okay. So,
Sorry, my bad.
Like Nuhad was saying, you don't necessarily have to take specific modules. Well, they aren't necessarily just specific modules for educational psych, clinical psych, etc. Right? The curriculum that you are doing, and if you are doing an honors in psychology, the curriculum will be formatted in a way where you can, like, be able to branch into the different types of psychology. One thing I can say though is that taking developmental psychology is something that is recommended if you do want to go into educational psychology, because you will be mainly working with children, and so having that level of understanding will be important, especially even with during selection week with masters. I'm not going to go into that because there are like masters workshop, but even with that, they do want to see your level of knowledge within the space that you do want to go into.
Right. Guys, we're going to do two more questions for this section. We will come back to the rest of the questions so we can move on and give you guys clinical counseling and neuro, all right? But two more questions. Any advice on how to get into HR and organizational psychology, also known as industrial psychology, along with other complementary courses or modules to do? Would you need to get registered with the HPCSA just to work in HR? So just to work in HR? No, because you're not providing a services towards people's mental health, or that is going to affect. HR can be just pure admin also. You don't have to even work with people if you're in HR. You can literally sit at a desk and do admin work. That can be your HR job. So the terms and conditions of your HR job can be very different. So no, you don't. However, if you want to get into HR straight after your undergrad, I would recommend doing then if like you want to go into HR, do an industrial do your honors in industrial psychology, or maybe there is human resource postgrad stuff where you change your faculty into the business and commerce faculty, and you'll specialize in HR or business management. Can you do the psychometry route to apply for industrial honors but didn't do HR and organizational modules in third year? When it comes to psychometry, you can only do psychometry after you've done your honors. So you need to have your honors. If your honors is theoretical based, then you can do your psychometry, and then you can apply for masters thereafter. You don't need to go back and do industrial honors. I'd recommend, if you want to again go into HR, specifically an organizational side, do your undergrad, do a normal postgrad if you're already gonna do that. However, try then if you know you're just gonna go into HR and you don't want to further than HR, try and get into the business faculty and do something in Bachelor of Commerce in Human Resources or Bachelor of Business in that. You get the vibes. However, if you do psychometry thereafter, maybe do a further postgrad in something. There's nothing wrong with being educated. You know what I'm saying? We will take the rest of your questions at the end of this.
Yes.
However, let's
If you
now,
have questions that haven't been answered, you can like
yes,
just repeat them like
for
after as well.
𝐜𝐶 and gladly we will answer.
Yeah.
However, let's start talking about this, guys. I get so passionate about this now. Let's start talking. Asanda will just share her presentation with us. Um, we're now going to talk about counseling psychology, clinical psychology, and neuropsychology. Can I get a show of hands here? Just like give me a bit of feedback about who's thinking of becoming a counseling psychologist or clinical psychologist or neuro, like just from the vibes of it. Who like just with the raise of hands or clapping or something. There we go. There we go. There we go. There, yeah. Oh, yo. So now we're here. We're here. We're here. Amazing. Amazing. Oh, guys, I feel the love. Is it towards me or is it the presentation? I don't know. Right. However, can you guys see
Can you
clearly?
see
I
my
think
screen?
it's quite blurry, I think.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, come on, look on your screen. But yes, I can see your screen. It's quite blurry though. I'm gonna, do you mind just sharing the actual presentation bit?
Yes,
I'm
I'm
just gonna
going
make
there.
sure. Can you guys see Asanda's screen clearly? Can you guys see the screen clearly? I'm looking at the chat box. If you guys can't, okay, unfortunately they can't, Asanda. I will share it on my side. That
Okay,
is
no
okay.
worries.
That is completely okay, guys. I will share it on my side.
It's my network.
Can we see clearly now? Yes, all right. Amazing. Okay. So let's talk about counseling psychology. So firstly, counseling psychology, when like you just think of the words counseling, it's giving da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, let's talk. Right. So within counseling psychology, what is it? This is helping people deal with life challenges, emotional struggles, and developmental issues. They aim to promote personal growth, wellness, and emotional resilience. All right. Guys, I'm just checking in with you guys. Are we all connected? Are we all good still with Wi-Fi? Okay, amazing. Then we move on to what does a counseling psychologist do? Everyone just imagine, just like take a step back. Let's feel the fantasy. We are all counseling psychologists for a second. What do we do with them, right? We provide individual, couple, or group therapy. So pure therapy. You deal with people's everyday problems. Somebody's going to come with grief and loss. Somebody's going to come and you need to diagnose them. Somebody's going to come and they're like, you know what? I don't know what to do next year. Which psychology route must I go into? You're going to provide them proper assessed career guidance. You're going to identify and adjust issues in their life. So they're going to come and say, listen, yeah, happened, happened. How can they work around it? How can they reshape their mindset around it? And then their family and relationship struggles, and they work with people across the lifespan, from an infant to a children to a adolescent to a teen to an adult to a grandpa to a grandma. They work with every age group. All right. So when people think of psychologists, this is the first type of psychologist everyone thinks of. It's a counseling psychologist. Okay. Now, how do you become a counseling psychologist in South Africa? You'll do something you guys are all in right now is a bachelor's degree in psychology. So once you do your bachelor's degree in psychology, that's 3 years, then you will go and do your honors in psychology. Try and do a theoretical based honors, that's mainly at your public institutions, or something like Emirates, or something like Emirates University, which is a private institution. And you can also go SACAP route. Those ones, they are your more looking forward. And then you do a 2 years master's in counseling psychology. The first year of your master's will do coursework. So that's like currently what you guys are better doing is theory. You learn textbook, writes exam, textbook, writes exam. Then your second year, put the textbook down, and you're working. You're now with people. You're now one on one. And you're putting whatever you learned for the last 6, 7, 8 years in practice. That's what you're doing now. So all of this is not for nothing. You're going to do it because you're working with human lives. After you've done all the studying, you're not yet a psychologist. You need to go write the board exam. Then you go to the HPCSA and say, listen, this is who I am. This is what I studied. I want to write. Then you write the exam and you need 75% on that paper. And once you get that paper and you see 75%, then you're a counseling psychologist. So 6 years minimum. All right. Now, again, where do you work? Universities and schools. Usually, I don't know, like some schools have a in-house psychologist, usually a counseling psychologist. Private practice, you can open up your own private practice. NGOs and community centers, a lot can also work. A lot of companies love to hire counseling psychologists. With industrial psychologists, it's like one, And then you can also work in hospitals and clinics, which is less common as they are more preferable or more suitable for clinical psychologists. However, please remember when it comes to becoming a psychologist, all of these different types of psychologists work together. You're not versing, it's not clinical versus counseling. It's clinical and counseling psychologists. You work together. So just know that. And it's not one above the other. Like here's a clinical psychologist, and then here's a research psychologist, and then here's a counselor. It's all on the same level, just different. You work with different clientele. You work with different individuals. Are we understanding? Right. Then let's talk about the salary. Yo, I love this part here, guys. Like, who doesn't? Right? Let's talk about in your internship year. So this is your second year of your master's. So you're still in uni. In your second year, you already start earning money. So you're still in uni and you're earning money in your second year of master's. This is between 8 to 10,000 rands, right? This is Nelson Rolihlahla rands. This is the ZARs. And then you leave there and you start your career. Once you leave there, you're going to look for a job or you own your own private practice. You're looking at a nice range of 30 to 40,000 to 45,000, right? Again, you are your business. When it comes to being a psychologist, a lot of the time you are your business. You need to market yourself. You need to make sure that you can, advertise yourself. Like, this is who I am. This is the services I provide. And then the bank, right? However, if you go into private practice, again, you're looking at a bigger range, very dependent on the area. You can be a counseling psychologist in a lower socioeconomic area and that earns a bit less. However, you're giving to community and it's very fulfilling, or in a more higher socioeconomic area where they'll pay you standard medical aid rates. All right. And that is a counseling psychologist. How are we feeling about that? Can I get like a clap of hands or something? Are we happy? Right? Before we move on to clinical and neuro. Right. I will answer all your questions at the end. But for now, are we ready to start with neuro? With clinical psychology. All right. So when it comes to clinical psychology, this is what I personally want to get into. It is my like I really want to get into here, right? So what is a clinical psychologist? A clinical psychologist focuses on assessing, diagnosing, treating emotional, behavioral, and mental disorders. Quite different. There is still talk therapy, the common, I done this, I went through this, how can we help you? There is still that there. However, your clientele will be quite different. It is more, I don't want to use the word intense. However, your environment is more intense. And we'll get into that a bit now when I explain the setting in which clinical psychologists work in. All right. So what does a clinical psychologist do? Let's all sit back again. Let's all imagine we're clinical psychologists. Are we there? Are we in our 2 a.m. dreams, midnights, fantasy vibes? Amazing. We then, let's say we're all clinical psychologists, we provide psychological assessments, right? That offers therapy and counseling. So we still do the talk therapy and all of that. We work with individuals, same like the rest. We work with couples, same like the rest. We work with families, same like the rest. And we work with group, same like the rest. However, a bit of a difference and a bit of a slight change about clinical psychologists is that we work very closely with a lot of doctors and psychiatrists, a lot of referrals. It's in a multidisciplinary team. So a lot of Psychiatrists will get their patients. However, their patients might not need medication. So then they're like, you know what, I'm going to refer you to a clinical psychologist rather because that's better for you. And then they'll come to you and they'll be like, hey, this is my patient. Okay, let's see how I can help them. And then a doctor might see a patient that maybe got, and you guys need to assess it, maybe a patient, a plastic surgeon. Let's talk about a plastic surgeon. A plastic surgeon got a patient that wants to do a lovely little nose job. So before doing a nose job, they maybe say that their client wants a bit of therapy. So then after giving the client a bit of therapy, then they know they can actually do that therapy set, that they actually can do the procedure or the medical procedure because it's all in the mind. It's all in the mind. Amazing. And then as a clinical psychologist, we treat a wide range of disorders from trauma, addiction, mood disorders, eating disorders, all of that. Amazing. And I want to just note that before we get into how to become one, that your clientele when you're becoming a clinical psychologist is quite different. You work with people who are autistic, who have Down syndrome, who are on the neurological deficit spectrum, who are more low functioning than what a counseling psychologist would look at. All right. Now, let's talk about how to become a clinical psychologist. All right. How to become a clinical psychologist in South Korea, what you guys are in, bachelor's degree. Whether that's BA, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Social Science, I think it's called. Yeah, Social Science. You're going to do that. Then you're going to do 1 year in honors, right? 1 year honors. Honors are also quite competitive, but you'll do your honors, your general BA or BS honors, depending on the institution, very theoretical based. And then masters. Clinical masters are deemed a bit, or are a bit different. Let me not say deemed. They are a bit different because you're going to do 2 years of your clinical masters, which is 1 year of coursework and 1 year supervised internship. So that's again, you learned all this beautiful information. Now let's put it into practice. Let's put it, what am I doing to help the people? Now you're going to work in a hospital, you work in private practice, you're moving, big things. After that, you will need to do another year of community service, and that's often in public hospitals or clinics. So quite high intense, quite high pressure and intense because you're working in a high and pressure intense environment. All right. After you do all those beautiful things of a minimum 7 years, given that you get accepted immediately, right? Then you can go to the HPCSA and say, hello, I wanna actually become a clinical psychologist. And you're gonna write that exam, you're gonna get 75% on that paper minimum, and then you're gonna become a clinical psychologist. All right. After all of that, now let's talk. Oh, sorry, where do you work? Let's go back there. I did touch on this, so I'm just gonna like go over it because I've been speaking about the different things. However, hospitals, especially psychiatric hospitals, however, general public hospitals, government hospitals, private hospitals, right? Private practice, you open up your own clinic or you open up your own center, your own therapeutic base, NGOs and clinics. You're going to work in correctional facilities. You will find like the military, right? The military loves clinical psychologists. Those are more correctional facilities as deemed, or spaces that want to rehabilitation, right? So SAPS loves us, the police services. And then you can also become a lecturer. Our lecturers are, a few of my lecturers are clinical psychologists, and that's just because they come with quite a broad scope. All right. And then let's go into the salary. Guys, I've been waiting me one day. Right. When we talk about the salary, we talk about the internship. And this is now when you're still in your masters, right? So in your masters, this is your second year, should be around 30 to 40,000 per month, right? You're still in your masters, you're still studying in your second year. That's what it's looking for. And then your community service year, this is where you're also going to write your board exams. You need to pass those board exams, guys. A bit of a standard 40, however, that is it, right? And then early on in your career, that amount can drop depending on how you, again, market yourself, on how you sell yourself, all right? You need to make sure you are you're backing yourself up as a clinical psychologist, and then you're looking at around 50. And at your mid-30s, maybe, you're going to look between 80 to 100 because you got your clientele. You got your people who are coming to you on a regular, all right? And they work a lot with those things. And that is clinical psychology. All right. Again, I will answer all your questions shortly. But how are we feeling about becoming clinical psychologists? Are we feeling good? Are we feeling I can do this? Are there any concerns? Are there any worries? All right. I will answer everything. All right. But now let's talk about something very like whenever I see this neuropsychology, my blood accelerates. I'm very like I'm here. I'm interested. I'm neuropsychology in South Africa. What is Apologies, guys. Do you mind muting yourself? Guys, I'm going to try. Guys, do you mind muting yourself? Are we muted? I think we're
I've
muted.
muted them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's go back into what is neuropsychology. All right. So neuropsychology explores the relationship between the brain and behavior. Behavior, right? Between the brain and behavior. And these psychologists emotional and behavioral issues caused by brain damage, illness, or developmental disorders. Very similarly to clinical psychologists, however, you're working with damages. So let's say somebody, and again, there is a fine line between a clinical and neuropsychologist. However, we'll get back into that, but in some brain damage, physical brain damage that now has caused psychological damage. Neuropsychologist. That's it. All right, we're there. Just to give some context. Now, what do neuropsychologists do, right? They conduct neuropsychological assessments. What is the difference between just a normal psychological assessment and neuropsychological assessments is that research psychologists, like how Asanda said, have made tests specialized for neuropsychology. All right, so you can see how all of these different fields work in one, right? And they work with patients that have, again, traumatic brain injury, dementia, strokes, epilepsy, ADHD or learning disabilities, and they provide rehabilitation plans for cognitive recovery. I want to take it back to ADHD or learning disabilities. When you think of those two educational psychologists, those two staff are quite diagnosed or seen at people's early childhood, right, in their adolescence, that educational psychologists pick up. Once the educational psychologist helps them treat that, if it's gone to a severity scale, then the educational psychologist will say, you know what, I think a neuropsychologist might fit this case better. And then they go here. Again, working together. It's not this or this or this or it's this and they're working together. All right. Now we're going to study. How long does it take to become a neuropsychologist? Two different routes, very different routes. However, the first route, let's talk about the first route. You get your 3-year bachelor's degree, then you do your honors. So 3 years, for 3 years, right? Bachelor's degree, 1 year honors, and then you do a master's in neuropsychology, right? Sorry, I think I made an auto mistake over there. I will fix that. I just want to make sure, can you guys see the wording on my screen? Just want to make sure you guys can see the wording and stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
everything's fine, Nuhad.
All right, perfect. However, you'll do a master's in this should say neuropsychology, right? The only institution that offers it is UCT. That is the only university in South Africa that offers a straight master's in neuropsychology. However, the second route is that you do a master's in either clinical or counseling psychology, and then after that, and then you can start practicing as a clinical or counseling psychologist, and then after that, you can do your PhD in neuropsychology, and you can get double boarded double certified. So at the HPCSA, you'll be a clinical psychologist. Let's say you've done clinical psychologist and you'll be a neuropsychologist. However, when you're treating patients, you then need to disclose which part of you is going to be used. So if you're working with a patient that got into a car accident, you need to say, hi, my name is, I'm a neuropsychologist. However, maybe you're working with somebody who has a eating dysfunction or whatever, and you say, hi, my name is, I am a clinical psychologist. So you disclose which part of your academics you're using. And then you write the board exam. Let's not forget that board exam, HPCSA, and then you are a neuropsychologist. All right. Now let's talk about what do they study. This is the reason I added this section because it is quite different. Specifically, what you study when you are in that master's program for neuropsychology. You study neuroanatomy and brain functioning. You study assessment tools like the WAIS, and the WISC, and there's so many different assessment tools that you can assert to people, and then neurological disorders, which you will learn also in clinical, rehabilitation psychology, which you learn across all the different fields mainly, and cognitive processes, which you should be also currently learning in your undergrad. So a bit of cognitive psych there. All right. And then where do they work? Hospitals and neuro clinics. So sometimes neurologists and neurosurgeons have their own specials. You can work there, right? That's moving on to the next one. Private neuropsychology practices, rehabilitation centers, and academic research institutions. So you can also work in a laboratory as with the research psychologist, and again, working together, right? Getting these two broad scopes working as one, all right? And then we talk about, and then we talk about the salary. The salary when it becomes a neuropsychologist, in terms of your master's, there is practicum there. However, there's not enough information to disclose in your master's year for me to give you guys as yet, as neuropsychology in South Africa is around only 4 years old now. It's fairly new in South Africa, neuropsychology, right? So it's quite competitive. So very competitive, highly specialized. So when something is more specialized, the income is more so higher because your clientele is higher. However, in your early careers, you're looking from 35 to 60, big gap, you need to market yourself. However, then when it comes to your mid-career, 70 to 100. And then when it comes to private and neuro practice, you're looking at 120. That is at some point in your career, right? When we're looking at that, it's not, please don't look at the last number and say, yo, the minute I leave, it's like that. This is in 10 years after more. So market yourself because you are not underqualified, you are undermarketed. You need to sell yourself. All right. So thank you guys so much for listening to this segment. I'm going to stop sharing. I hope that provided a bit of information for you guys. Asanda and I will take your questions now. There's quite a few questions. I'm just going to go back. No. Oh my God, where are we? All right. Asanda, are we good to start?
Yes, we are.
All right.
Okay, some of the questions have been answered in the chat, right?
Okay,
So
amazing.
as you read the questions, I'll let you know which ones have been answered.
All right, I'm just going to go back. Okay, I think they have, those ones that were asked earlier on have been answered, all right? So let us move on to, what is the
So then
difference
if you
between,
do still have, oh, apologies.
yeah,
If you still do have questions about industrial psychology, educational psychology, and research psychology that we didn't get to answer earlier, you can just send the message on the chat, just referring to them like, oh, I'd like an answer to this question. We can
yes.
continue.
So back to the first two questions, and back to the first question actually asked, is there any tips for studying psychology? Yes. I don't know them, I'm joking. In terms of tips for studying psychology, please, I would recommend try and breaking down your work and not just learning to answer, but understand what you're learning. And that way your answer can be more in depth. That's what they look for when they mark. They look for in-depth answers, not textbook answers. All right. That's the best thing I can give you guys.
And you can also, like Nuhad said, the focus should be on understanding, right? Because then it's like you can always cram the information and just regurgitate it into a test, but then you're not actually learning anything, right? And as you go along from like first year up to finish undergrad, honors, masters, it's application, right? So there's a lot of application that goes into it. So you have to understand your work. What you can also do is just like teach yourself, like learn the information and then just like, give mini presentations for yourself or teach somebody else. It could be somebody who has absolutely no idea about the field, or it could be a peer. So that kind of helps you like gauge what you do understand and what you still need like to pay more attention to. And I think that really helps a lot when it comes to like, just your work, because when you are, let's say, doing an application based questioning, because you've got the theory down to a T, right? It also helps you like, be able to like figure it out, because not everything is just like written on paper. You need to apply yourself. So yeah.
Thank you so much. What is the difference between a counseling psychologist and a therapist? I'm going to just read the answer that was given. Therapist is a broad term, informal, clinical counseling, social workers, even coaches can refer to themselves as therapists, where counseling psychologist is a regulated professional registered with the HPCSA. That is a perfect explanation. So the word therapy is not a registered word. There's certain words. So you can call yourself a therapist. Let's say you're a counselor, a registered counselor, not a counseling psychologist. You can say that you're a therapist, but you cannot say that you're providing therapy because the word therapy is regulated. It's slight things here, but these are all legal things. These are all very legal things. Therapist is very different from therapy, asserting the physicalized form of it. All right. But thank you so much for that explanation. That is perfect. What steps can you take in ensuring you finish your degree from bachelor's to master's in record time? There is no record time. Let me first disclose that everyone's timeline is different. There is zero record time. It's a difficult process because when it comes to applying for masters, the universities look every single year for something particular. Let me say that if I applied last year, let's say, for example, actually, let's use my life. Let's say I applied this year for next year, but they weren't looking for somebody who's interested in sex, and they weren't looking for somebody with like what I'm giving right now. They weren't looking for that for the program. Then, dollar, I'm not accepted. However, the following year, maybe they're looking for that, so I get accepted. It's not, a lot of the time, it may not be dependent on you. It may not. So, record time is different. However, please ensure that 80% distinction. I'm not going to even say 70%. Please just get that 80% then. If you really, 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 80% distinctions and a plethora of volunteering. When I say a plethora of volunteering, quality volunteering. I'm not saying go volunteer at a million places. Maybe choose 2 places and volunteer quite often there and build a good repertoire at those places. All right, that's like basic, right? I just wanted to ask because in a lot of postgraduate endeavors, they require references or 2. What's my best bet to establish a relationship where I can attain these aside from school-based volunteer programs like SSA? Okay, it's a bit of a deeper one, right? When it comes to reference letters, this is what people struggle with the most. When it comes to that, the best way you can establish relationships is your lecturers. Make sure you play it a bit strategic from first year, maybe even if you can. If you guys are in first year, second year, third year, attend your classes. That shows your dedication. Get your high marks, and your lecturers will see that. And communicate with your lecturers. Communicate with them. Give them, say, sir, I was looking at this article. Ma'am, I was looking at the article. Professor, I was looking at this article. Doctor, I was looking at this. What do you think of this? I'm thinking of adding this to my thing. It shows that level of communication, that of your interest, those small stuff, because they can't just write a letter of reference if they don't know you. But now if you've been communicating for them for like a whole year now, there's a baseline of something for them to give a reference letter. And the type of questions they ask in the reference letters is, how long do you know the person for? what what makes this person fit for this program, for this university's program. It's very detailed questions that they need to spend about 10 hours writing that letter for you. Don't just give it to anyone. All right.
Yeah, just to add on that, even like um answering questions in class, right? Because not a lot of people answer questions in class, right? And when lecturers are like, interact, etc., etc., they get to know you, they remember you, and they see some level of your personality as well. Then when you are asking them for a reference letter, there's more things that they can actually say about you. They can actually say that this person's interests lie within this field. Let's say you've got, I don't know, developmental psychology, right? And you just interact in the class. Obviously, your interests do come out, and the lecturers can, put that in when they are writing the reference letter. And then, as Nuhat mentioned, with volunteering, right, that is another option. You can have mentors as well, right, that do know you, right? They do know you, and they do know some level of information about you. They've taken you throughout your entire journey. So let's say you've had a mentor from first year, right, and up until you go to masters, they know you more than anyone else, especially within the capacity of like just your academic environment. So that's also helpful if you do have a mentor.
Yes, absolutely. And please note that when it comes to, again, your references, it doesn't just have to be a lecturer. Even if you worked for somebody, informally you worked for them. Sharp, sharp. If somebody just give it to somebody that knows you in depth in a professional and academic way, that is not family or friends or family friends. If you work for your father, your mother, your uncle, it does not count. Then it's bias. All right. But what modules do we specifically have to do in third year if we aspire to do clinical or counseling psychology in honors and masters? You cannot do clinical or counseling in honors. You can only do it in masters. So let's go to masters. Try and do developmental psychology. It's your guys, developmental, just do it. Just do developmental, right? It goes everywhere. Abnormal psychology, cognitive psychology. If you guys can do neuropsychology, and if you can do psychological assessment, and two research modules, whether that is research in stats or research methodologies or research dissertation, but your research is very important. If you can do two research modules, mwah, amazing. So we got your psych down and we got research down, very important. Please make sure you get that done. That is baseline. However, the wording at different universities will be a bit different. However, make sure brain stuff and research is important. All
Yeah,
right.
I'll just read the answer given. So this is mostly just for honors, right? It says that your psychology modules in undergrad are general modules, which is true, right? And universities offer, oh my word, I lost it. Universities tend to offer like a different curriculum, but it's standardized for the most part, right? So with that, for honors, it doesn't really matter. Again, it's just your performance, getting that 80% average, getting a 75% average. That's what they look for honors. And also some institutions, right? Let's say at a third year level, you get to choose modules. I'll use for an example, right? Let's say you didn't do psychotherapeutic interventions in third year, they offer it in fourth year as well, right? So then you can have like diverse modules as well, if it's something like, that you would be needed. So yeah, so the curriculum, the institution curriculums just for like these modules other than organizational psych, it's more so standard across the board.
Yes. The next question, internship for neuropsychology is unpaid. That is still, again, guys, neuropsychology is fairly new, right? When it comes to the pay of your internship, please note that even, let's say you do clinical psychology, right? There is only, let's, I'm giving quite equitable answers, not the actual factual answers. But let's say there's only 10 hospitals in the whole country. Let's assume there's only 10 hospitals, and each hospital can only take two clinical psychologists to train. That hospital then take them. Now, when they added neuropsychology as a thing, Maybe this hospital was a psychiatric hospital. So now those clinical psychologists are now replaced by neuropsychologist students. Does the internship get paid? Maybe. Now, the intersection of it, that's why there's a term called clinical neuropsychology, that long term, the lines in South Africa are still blurred. They're still working on mitigating that gap. So when it comes to the pay of it, the reason I'm not giving a fixed number right now in your internship here is because they're still working on that system of what is the difference between the clinical and counseling in terms of the place that they get trained. That is quite fine blurred lines. So not a fixed answer, not necessarily unpaid, just pay different. All right. Co-ask because as a second year, I am intending to work with WCCO until my last year in the relationship I form with my supervisor important. Can I use them for a references, even if it is just a program for student community outreach, giving out food and is not related to the profession I am interested in, which is clinical psychology? I don't, it doesn't mention how long you've been working for this food outreach program, but if you're working for a while, then you have a supervisor, absolutely you can. If you're working for them for a year now and that supervisor knows your work ethic, right? So when we say your work ethic, not your academic work ethic, they can say, this person pitches up every single time we are in a community. And this person, every time we there, takes the initiative and leadership role to da 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 da. They're speaking about your work ethic, the substance of who you are. Then absolutely. All right. Psychology modules. Okay, you already read that, right, Osanda?
Yeah, I did.
All right. Is there anyone who is part of as they say, as a student?
Liza,
I'm not completely
I
educated on
can
that,
answer
so
this
maybe you can
question.
take that. Yes.
Okay, okay. So I was part of SISA from 2024 till 2025, right? And it's different each year. It changes, right? But currently SISA has like different, I guess, not fields, but like different things you can volunteer in, right? So you can do like be in research, you can be in like social media campaigns management, etc., right? So as you know, SISA is a psychological society of South Africa, and it has a student division. So if you wanted to be a volunteer, you firstly have to register as a SISA member, and they have a membership fee. I think it's about 200 rand, give or take, right? And then what you would need to do is then reach out to the executive, so the student division executive, right? So then the people in the executive will let you know like what opportunities are there available if you wanted to be a part of SISA, right? And then maybe they can have a volunteer program at their campuses, at like different campuses. I'm just giving general, like from when I was a part of SISA, because we had a volunteer program at WITS only for the 2025 year. And what we did is that we worked with the Office of Student Success and did like community outreach programs. We did like peer engagement programs, etc. So with SISA, and also look at their social media, their Instagram, they do post when they like want volunteers for something, etc. So I think that's the level of volunteering you can do. And then they also do have volunteering at the conference, the annual conference, right, which is more so a 4-day thing, which is a bit different, right, because you just are helping out with everything in the conference. It is a good thing to do because it is a networking opportunity, because psychologists across the country like will be there, students, master students, etc. So it is also a good networking opportunity. And you can also, I think they do also give a reference, right? But it's a 4-day thing, so it's also a bit limited into what they know about you. But I hope that gave you the information about SISA.
Thank you so much. Even I'm educated about it. I might just get myself a membership. You know what I'm saying? Now, okay, Nuhad, can you please tell us about your qualification, if you don't mind me asking? Guys, don't test me with a good time. I love talking about myself, right? So, a bit about my qualification. I am studying at Emirates, previously known as Varsity College, still under IIE, the Independent Institution of Education. It is a private university. We are currently, it's the first year as Emirates, And I done my undergrad at Varsity College, where we done a very theory-based, very, as I said, in order to have a degree in Bachelor of Arts, it needs to be standardized across South Africa. So very much standardized with I'd say a public university curriculum, very standardized. Done modules from abnormal psychology to cognitive psychology to research stats and statistics. And then I personally chose communication as my second major. I double majored. And the reason is because I wanted to fall back on, again, never know what life happens. I wanted to fall back on human resources and HR. That way, that's where my communication came in. And that's where there. And currently, I'm doing my honors at Emirates University. And we're currently doing modules from psychological assessment to therapeutic interventions and a year-long dissertation or I don't want to use the word dissertation, a year-long
Research project.
research project. That's the word. That's the word. A year-long research project with like 4 other modules that I haven't yet started. So I'll do next semester. From developmental psychology, part 2. We done it in our undergrad, doing it again. But that is a bit about my qualification. I would recommend it to anyone, guys. I learned so much, like a lot of information. Again, I don't think there's a lot of people who take what they learn properly from their institutions. You need to, again, market yourself. Take what you learned and bagait. When I say bagait, you know what I mean, guys. We're also African here, right? I think if we're not bagait, it means use it, right? Now, what job can you get with the BA? We will share our previous presentation with you guys. I will ask the Papano team to share that. In our previous presentation, we did discuss this in quite detail of what you can just do with a Bachelor of Arts degree. All right.
You can also
Nice.
search Papa Another Difference on YouTube. The workshop is on YouTube. So go subscribe, go view, and all that information is there from us.
Actually, that's a better one, guys. If you want to watch the previous presentation, please go to our YouTube page. Right. Based on being a clinical psychologist, is it important for me to start job shadowing early as a second year? Rather than important, it may be difficult for you to find that job shadowing because you're not qualified to job shadow. Even as an honor student, I cannot job shadow. I cannot sit in counseling sessions. And that's purely based on confidentiality of the client. Job shadowing is, I don't want to say near impossible, but it only happens for master's level students. And they make it for that because of how intense it is being a psychologist, right? So whether you want to start it or not as early, I love the enthusiasm, I love the passion. I'd say go into volunteering for now. Volunteer, if you can, volunteer even at maybe find a practice and ask them what you can do to help them as a volunteer and just be exposed to that environment. All right. Know all the internships, okay? I'm just gonna scope there for, okay, they answered that question. Okay, so when applying for industrial psychology, is it better to look into applying for a general BA honors in psychology or look into doing a straight honors focusing on industrial psychology? Should I take it?
Yeah, you can take it.
All right. A little bit of both, depending where you want to go into. I personally would recommend if you do take a general BA, please make sure the modules align with applying for an industrial psychology master's, number one. However, what a general BA does is give you security in possibly, and your mind changes. I think, again, in my whole undergrad, I wanted to become a counseling psychologist. And then I started finding my passion in December. And then December, I was like, no, I'm definitely a clinical. Like, I'm definitely made to be a clinical psychologist. Like, what was I thinking? So you have a bit of job security taking a BA in terms of scope. You don't want to limit yourself. However, if you know like 1,000 billion, million, quadrillion%, then sure, go the industrial psychology straight route.
I think the important thing would be that in your undergrad, explore as much as possible, do research, find out. Like, even with the presentation we're doing now, is to expose you to the different fields so that you can find your interest. So you don't find yourself in a position where you're doing, you know, your honors and you're like, maybe I should have done the other one. Just basically doing industrial psychology and you're like, I actually want to go into clinical. Now what? Then you have to redo it, etc. Right? So what I can say is that in your undergrad, explore as much as possible, research as much as possible, talk to as many people as possible within the psychology space just to find out like what everything entails, etc. Yeah, that's just the advice that I would give you. And if you do go to, Wits, for example, where they allow you to, have a mixture of modules and still be able to qualify for industrial psychology and general psychology, maybe do that because you'll be fine. Because when you do get into honors, you do some modules again. You get.
Yes, yes.
And we allow Dando to come in quickly. He's an intern in industrial psychology, so he can answer this as well.
Perfect.
Thank you, 𝐿'Vile. Just to answer that question quickly, um, universities don't care if you're doing BA, BCom, Bachelor of Social Science, as long as you have industrial psychology modules. Even for honors, they don't care if you're doing BA honors in industrial psychology or BCom honors in industrial psychology. The most important thing here is, do you have honors in industrial psychology? The BA, BCom, whatever is just a title. The most important thing is honors in industrial psychology.
Thank you so much
I
for
hope
that.
I did answer the question.
Thank you so much for that. Truly appreciate that. All right, guys. I hope that gave you guys some clarity there. Moving, and also when it comes to volunteering as someone interested in clinical psychology, is it important to volunteer with programs that align with clinical psychology, or any volunteering programs is fine? Just volunteer. But again, make sure what you're doing for volunteering. Again, volunteering at a million places for one day, one day, one day. That's they're not looking at how often you're volunteering. What they're looking for is that in-depth volunteering. Is that somebody can say they pitched up, they contributed. That's what they're looking for when it comes to volunteering. All right. So anything, Nintendo? Do you want to
Yes,
take it?
just to add on that, I want people to be cautious when it comes to volunteering programs, because you find people volunteering in 5 institutions, yet they don't get accepted into master's program. They must ask themselves why. And also do it with intention. Don't just do it because you want to get accepted. If you're gonna be volunteering in 3 different institutions, but you can't reflect on your role being in that institution when you're writing your what do they call these reports? Motivational reports. If you don't reflect on your experiences, I'm telling you, you're gonna waste your time by volunteering. You're going to waste your money. Please do not volunteer for the mere sake of volunteering. Volunteer with an intention. Do it knowing that you really want to do it, not just that you want to get into the master's program. Because I know someone who have been volunteering for 7 years, they're still applying for masters even now. So volunteering, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. And most of the professionals in this field, they don't speak about the disadvantage of volunteering for years and years and years. So guys, please be careful with that. Do please, if you really want to volunteer, do volunteer with an intention, and make sure that you reflect on your experiences.
Yes. Thank you so much again. We truly appreciate this insight. When it comes to volunteering, they do want to see. Okay, thank you so much. I'm not going to read our comments. I'm just going to read the question straight up. But thank you everyone for sharing your comments. Which type of psychology does psychometry fall into? Specifically, psychometry is quite broad, a little bit of everything. You do psychometry, right? However, clinical psych is giving psychometry because you are gonna do a lot of searching of tests. However, you also do as a educational psychologist, research psychologists do it. I think, stand to be corrected, research psychology, they literally make the test as they go. They literally develop the psychometry tests themselves. Psychometry is everywhere. It is everywhere, whether we like it or not. I'm currently struggling in the module, but it's fine. We'll get there, right? When should you start volunteer? Because I've heard that it helps in terms of applying for masters. So as we have been given this beautiful information, don't just do it for the sake of doing it and starting early and getting millions of years of volunteering. It's intention. The intention, that word, it's going to stick with me. That intention matters. So truly make sure that when you volunteer, obviously the earlier you start in theory, however, you're not just going to go to a place, you're going to start and 2 months you're done. You start your 2 months and it's in depth, it's filled with substance, and you're doing it for 2 or 3 years. That has better outcome. All right. Assessment. Are internships in industrial psychology paid? If so, from what amounts does the salary range? So you don't actually, I stand to be corrected there, but you don't do an internship in university in industrial psychology. You can apply privately thereafter for a graduate program if you'd like to. But I stand to be corrected. Maybe we can get some more information on internship in relation to industrial psych.
I think it's more for us
Um,
about the intern. Oh, Dando can take it. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Yes, internships in industrial psychology are paid.
Mm.
You can only do your internship when you finish your M1.
Okay, perfect. So
Then
it is
if
part
it
of a
happens
second
that,
year module.
Mm.
yeah, it is.
All
It
right,
is. So
perfect.
they are paid.
All right, so as mentioned, it is like the others. So you do your first year of your master's is coursework, your second year is internship with pay. It'll look a bit different to the place you work. However, it is pay, right? Does volunteering also play a part of being able to get into industrial psychology honors and masters? Yes, again, do it with intention. Do it with intention.
I'm sorry to
Not
do
for
this.
honors though. Honors is purely academic.
Yeah, no masters. So we're talking about.
For I'm speaking from my experience,
Yes, yes.
and yes, for to get into masters, they don't really look into whether you have volunteered or not. They look in what is it, your academics
All right.
and your motivation when it comes to if they require you to write a motivational letter, why they should accept you into the program. They don't care if you have any working experience, you have volunteered before, because we must bear in mind that the industrial psychology is it's like a step sibling in regards to the rest of the disciplines in psychology. It's totally different, but they are all the same in terms of
Yes.
you getting accepted into the program. But when it comes to volunteer, they don't care about that.
Thank you so
I
much.
think that I think that it's important to note, like as we've been talking about volunteering, and as Ndando said, right, like you could be volunteering for 10 years and then it isn't fruitful, right? A large part of volunteering, like Dando said, is like being able to reflect and being able to learn, right? As you're volunteering, you're also learning about yourself, you're also learning about society, you're also learning about certain issues and the way you exist in that space, right? So they're not necessarily going to be like, oh, you did 300 hours of volunteering, therefore you're a good candidate. But being able to take that experience and connect it to yourself, connect it to the work that you're doing, that is the most important part. So even if it's not volunteering and it's just work experience, for example, let's say you have a job, right? That is something that you can bring across and be like, okay, this is what I've learned, this etc etc, right? So I think that's a big thing to be cautious about, because a lot of the time we think volunteering, oh, I have to volunteer, I have to get these many hours, when it's not necessarily that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was when I needed that one, right? I'm in my second year and I got 75% for my final mark in psychology for first year. Is that a good start? Or I need to pull my socks up even with elastics to tie my socks tight to make sure that I can improve. I just need your opinion. Don't hold back. I like pressure. 75, if you're getting 75% until like just keep that 75%, just get 75, right? It's good. If you can get higher, why not? We always want to be the best version of ourselves, right? We all want to set. Currently, I wish I could get like 98% or 99.9, but I like do your best, guys. Do your best. That 75% is currently amazing and it's good. Keep it up. It's working. Keep it up. Work harder. If you can get, if that 75% was because you only put 50% in effort, what could you do with 100% in effort, you know? At the end of the day, it's quite, the people that are competing with you are people who are getting 75 and above. They're not even considering people who are lower than 75 these days. So just, you want to be in a higher quartile of that. But well done, we're very proud of you.
You said you want the pressure, ne? I'm gonna tell you now, and this is obviously based off of my experience, right? I'm not saying that it's the same across the board. Some people are different, but I can tell you that my marks from first year to third year went like this, right? Because it gets significantly harder, right? And there's a lot more effort that you have to put in, and you also have other modules, etc., right? So you are doing amazing. 75% is amazing, right? And like Nuad said, if you can keep it up, you're fine, right? But you need to be conscious of the fact that things are getting harder, therefore a lot of more effort needs to be put in. And when you get to honors, right, they take from the top going down until they fill the spaces, right? So if you have it depends. It's different for different years because the application pool is never exactly the same, right? So you can be somebody with a 74% who gets in 1 year, and the next year you can't get in, right? So again, do your best, apply yourself, and it will work out in the end.
Yes, it will. I think for me, just to give you guys a bit of experience, I think mine's a bit of the opposite. It went from first year to here, and then it got a bit better. And that's because of passion. I grew a bigger passion for it. In first year, I felt like we were doing everything from communication to business to, we're doing a bit of law in first year. I think I was doing 4 majors in first year, which was like, I don't know what happened in first year. I was doing law and then I was doing journalism. So in first year was like, what am I doing? I'm not interested. And then second year, pure communication and pure psychology and communication. Passion was like, okay, I'm here now. And then third year came, and again, but in second year we were doing social psych and a bit of like, it was still giving like, I'm not here with the type of psych we're doing. And then third year came and we're doing developmental psychology, cognitive psychology, abnormal psychology, which is deemed the harder modules. However, I was interested, and out of passion and interest, I succeeded. And in honors, hey, so far we're struggling, but the marks are not terrible. The marks are not terrible. They're not masters good yet, but we need to. I also need an elastics for my socks, but
Real.
I will say your passion, your growth, and your individualism plays such a big factor. Such a big factor. Right. How do we find places where we can volunteer? Because I don't have any knowledge about this. And also, do we look for places where we can volunteer that relates to psychology? That just relates to helping people. Let's go there. And please look at Papano's page, guys, on LinkedIn. We do repost a lot of volunteering opportunities. Please do look at that and update your LinkedIn so that LinkedIn can also and follow these places that offer volunteering. That way you can get notified when a position opens up. That's the easiest way. I can't sit and give you a whole list of places. There's a lot of places. Just look where something would suit you best. Right. Let's go for 80. I know you can get it. 𝐜𝐶𝐫𝐞, thank you so much. Please check out Neuropsych SA. Amazing. Universities like WITS now made a minimum entry of 78%. Yeah, I did not know that. I don't, I think
I think
maybe,
it's also the people who did get in. Correct me
I
if I'm
think
wrong.
it's not a current minimum
Yeah.
minimum standard on the approval site. So if you look online, it's currently, I think it's 70% still. However, internally, please no, even for masters. I think for some institutions it says 60% for honors because they understand how hard it is. UNISA, I think minimum requirement is 60% for your honors. However, they deep down we all know they're looking for that 75%, that 80% because they want that. But again, please remember, different. One person can be getting 68%. However, when they apply, their background, their experience, and all of that. When it comes to masters, it's not just academics, unless it's industrial. It's not just academics. They want to know you, and that plays a big part, right? Is the curriculum not different in universities? is the curriculum. Different universities have different curriculums. However, there is a standardized form of what knowledge needs to be inserted in the students. All right. Sorry to take you back. You mentioned that master's in educational psychology, you need to have taken developmental psychology. But what if I only did developmental psychology during my undergrad and not in my honors? Would I still qualify? Yes, you would.
Yes.
You absolutely would.
Mhm.
The content of it is quite similar, obviously. So I'm talking about myself. I done it both in my undergrad and I chose it again in my honors because of the depth. It gets a bit more deeper. We're learning about neuroplasticity now, and it's more aligned with, I would say, a bit of neuropsych. However, my institution doesn't offer neuropsych, but it's more in depth. However, yes, you do qualify if it's in your undergrad. I do have a counseling psychologist I know who I visit every time I go back home, and she is a stranger I met in 2024, and I'm doing that. So I just want to read the question before I read out aloud. Sorry, yeah, no. All right, let me reread the question out aloud because now it's right. I do have a counseling psychologist I know who visited every time I go back home, and she is a stranger I met in 2024 when I was doing my matric. I went to a clinic to ask about psychology. I got used to her and always input her on what is going on in my life. How I felt about the present semester also, it's kind of like I developed in front of our eyes. Is it recommended for me to get a letter of a reference letter from her? Guys, we do host, Papano does host masters workshops. So please do refer to those masters application workshops in specific. However, just to give a bit of a sum, it is a fine line, as you don't want to, if it's your psychologist, you may not want to affect your relationship with your psychologist and cross over to a professional barrier. However, if it's something you and her are both comfortable with, go ahead and do that. That's a personal choice to make. You know your relationship best. All right. Check out Cognition & Co. Guys, please do look at Cognition & Co. Yo, that website, whoever is running that website, I hope success for them so much. Cognition & Co. is an amazing site. Hey guys, I am a third year BA student majoring in psychology, and I'm planning to apply for psychology honors. But I recently found out that research methodology is part of the core required modules. I wasn't able to register for it earlier this year due to some registration issue, and the lecturer couldn't approve my late entry. Do you know if I can still if it is still possible to qualify for honors without it, and if there is any way to make up for it? This is a very tricky one. This, I would say, is one of the most tricky questions you guys have asked so far, because research methodologies is quite an important module. It's quite an important module. I don't want to answer that completely now. I will
I can
ask,
answer it.
can you, like, perfect.
Yeah, so it depends on the institution you're in, right? On really like ways to make up for it, right? But it is a requirement. A lot of institutions, they will tell you that you have to have, like, research methodology, have done a course in research methodology, as part of the requirements for honors. So yes, so from that perspective, it is a requirement. In ways to make up for it, it depends on your institution. What I would say is that go to your faculty offices and find out if they possibly offer it part-time in the second semester, and then you can register for it as a part-time module. That's one way to do it. Or you can do it next year as an occasional module, and then apply for your honors the next year. Right. So those are ways that I can advise you to make up for
Yes.
it, but it is an important requirement.
Just to give a different perspective or similar perspective, like simultaneously, is that please note that some institutions do reject quite early. I've got experience with it from the University of Pretoria when I was applying for my for my honors, is that they do consider your first semester marks already. So if that is not there already, it's a bit of a concern. However, nothing to jump on. Your journey may not just be the same as what you'd like it to be, which I understand. you may need to do the research methodologies, start as early as possible, and then maybe you'll finish it mid next year, and you can apply for the following year intake of honors, or look into if a university can integrate it into their program. Sometimes they do allow that things, or looking into something like SACAP's honors program, it's a BPsych equivalent postgrad. I stand to be corrected, but please do look at that postgrad one if you haven't done it. You may have a better bet into that program specifically. All right.
What I do say is that we are running a bit over time, right? So
Are we right?
we will answer the other questions, but for the people who do have to leave, right? I just want to say thank you for coming to part 2 of the workshop. Committing to 2 sessions is a lot of effort, but you gain something out of it, and we'd appreciate you coming to more workshops, and we just want to share knowledge and give you access to the knowledge because it's tough. This
Yeah.
field is a tough one to navigate, and we don't want you to be alone, because that is lonely, and there's a lot that can go wrong, right? But for the people who will be leaving, because I notice some people have already left, enjoy your day, and then if you still want to stay and listen to the answers for the other questions, we can do that as well.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We truly appreciate y'all. We are super proud of you guys, so how far y'all are coming. And the fact that y'all attended this workshop shows y'all's passion and interest. So well done, everyone. We're really proud of y'all. We're gonna continue the questions until next time for those who are leaving. Was. But let's continue answering, all right? Um, just trying to navigate where we are. Okay. Okay, Asanda, can I
I
please
think
take
they've
control?
texted me already. It's
All
okay.
right. Okay. I am applying now for honors, inshallah. I get accepted. My question is, do you recommend applying after semester 1 results are out, or should I already start applying now? Also, I'm doing BA under, is that
Yeah,
humanities?
humanities.
Humanities. But some institutions have psychology under health science. Is it normal? Am I looking at the wrong thing? It is completely normal. Different things. For example, some institutions only offer a Bachelor of Science, like how you said, or a Bachelor of Social Science honors program. It is completely normal. Your modules qualify you, you are qualified. If it's an honors program specializing in psychology and you've done any type of BA, whether that's Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Social Science, majoring in psychology, you qualify, right?
Honestly,
Uh,
even if you did another degree, right, and you have
yes,
a major in psychology, you have psychology up until third year,
yes,
even if you did social work, even if you did audiology, it doesn't matter as long as you have a major in psychology. So up until third year psychology, then you qualify for any honors in psychology.
exactly. And then, do I recommend you applying in semester 1? I am not 100% sure. I think applications do close in August. However, please do look at application dates closing. Some might close in June. UP University of Pretoria might close in June. They want your first semester marks and your previous years, your first and second year. So please apply as soon as possible. Just apply, apply, apply. It is very important to get the marks and apply at the same time. Just if you have current marks, work with the current marks you have. If you have your last year's marks, work with it. Apply as soon as possible. Do not wait for the last moment, because sometimes your institution might be the one at fault. And when you're asking them and you're emailing them, hey guys, can I have my academic records? And then they don't give you academic records, and then you blame the institution that you're currently at. Please just apply. Apply, right? Please don't forget to share the slides, guys. We will also be posting it on our YouTube page, as Sandra mentioned, right? So please
Just
do watch.
subscribe, like and
Subscribe. Papa
subscribe.
know the difference. Right. I received 90s in my first year. Yo, Saba well. And shortly my marks dwindled down around second to third year. Same twin. I even have to repeat my
Hmm.
third year modules and have an extra year. I'm committed to getting 90s again, and even got 49/50 on my last semester test. With my improvement now, will my drop in performance from second year affect my admission? Are we talking about admission into honors or
On a
admission into masters? If we're talking about admission into honors, potentially, when it comes to University of Pretoria, I don't know them specifically because that one hurt me personally, right? The weighting is 40%. So your second year weighs 40% of your admission and 60% of your third year. So please look at what the institution requires. However, a strong overall psychology mark is quite important. However, your third year is most important. So it's not the end of the world. It's just that, and again, I think they do look at the gap and the improvement that you made. They do. They're not as they're harsh, but they're harsh with validity to them.
What I can say is that, like Nuad said, it's different for different institutions, right? Because like they have their own internal process, right? Like if UCT, for example, looks at all 3 of your years, etc., right? But again, the most important is your third year marks, right? And because
Yes.
obviously now you are repeating your modules, they will take it into consideration also your improvement from like the first time you did the modules, and obviously now that you what's this looking. So it is really dependent, right? Because some people might have had a bit lower third year marks, but their second year marks were excellent and they got accepted because they can see that, this person is
Potentially.
actually good at what they do. So I think that you're not necessarily at a disadvantage because, like you're saying, you repeating your modules, you are increasing your like overall aggregate score.
Yes. How
And
is
congratulations on the improvement.
well done, yes. How is one's average calculated when getting into honors? Do they only look at your psychology modules and then add up your marks and divide by the modules to get the average? I stand to be corrected, but no. They do look at your other stuff also. However, your psychology marks is number one, right? Sandra, do you want to correct me there?
They only look at your
Do
psychology
they only look at
marks.
your psych? All right.
Yes. Your other
Perfect.
modules are for majoring in that, doing an honors in whatever.
Perfect.
For psychology, it is just your psychology marks.
Amazing. So, guys, please make sure you do it in your psychology modules. Do that developmental psych. Make sure. Okay. So can I still be a member? Asanda, you can answer this question. So can I still be a member, but I can't volunteer like the others?
There's a conversation that's happening in the chat about that,
Okay,
so I don't think about
amazing.
us.
Tips to apply for honors. When do they open and require it? Do I just go on the websites and apply? We do have honors application program and workshops. Please do look at our honors workshops that we are going to host. It will not be Asanda or myself. We do have more qualified individuals who are going to host our honors workshop. So please will you attend those workshops on specific to do with your honors applications. All right. I think that will be more quantifiable for you guys.
But
Applications
yeah,
are
some
already open.
institutions are already open.
A
So
lot of the institutions are already
probably
open.
all, probably
I
all
will
of them
say,
are.
I think all are open. Some open up mid-May and then close. I think most also close end of June, beginning July. Please apply, guys. Now is time. These applications take time to do. So just make sure you get them done and apply everywhere. All right. And then, all right. I think we have come to the end of our questions and segments. Thank you guys so much for attending today. We truly do appreciate the time you guys have taken. We see the dedication, we see everything, we see you. How I hope you guys are feeling good after this workshop and you got the information you needed. I hope everything is like you feel knowledgeable. You now know more. Oh, I want to become a counselor. I want to become a researcher. I want to become a industrial. I want to become a clinical psychologist. Whatever it is, I hope you got a bit more clarity on what it actually entails, the job you will be doing, the pay, right? The pay. Who doesn't love that? And
Psychologists make money, guys. You know how they
you know,
talk about, they saying psychology graduates, are